guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm finally sitting down to film a video that I've been wanting to film for the longest time, but for a long time I was like, how am I gonna make this video because it's gonna be really awkward. This is a total TMI video, so family and friends, if you don't want to watch that kind of stuff, please stop here. Today I'm gonna be talking about all of the things that no one tells you about childbirth, and really, a lot of it is not that fun. A lot of it is not okay. But now that I'm 6 months postpartum, I figured I'd sit down and film this video before I forget everything. I also have some family and friends who are about to give birth, so I figured I would just lay it all out there for you guys so you know what to expect. Again, super TMI, so I'm warning you, like later on, don't say like, oh, you shouldn't have talked about that or you should have warned me. I have totally warned you guys. I'm gonna need some iced coffee for this. So for those of you guys new to my channel, my name is Kayla. I'm a first-time mom. My baby girl is 6 months old. I live in Miami, Florida. I'm just trying to figure this out. Being a parent is hard. Giving birth to a child, I'm not sure if that's harder or actually parenting is hard. Not quite sure, but they're both very hard. So definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. I just really try to tell you guys how it is. I try to be very real with my videos. So if you like that kind of stuff, then keep on watching. All right, so childbirth. There's a lot of stuff they don't tell you about it. Probably because like if people didn't get pregnant and have babies, then I guess the world would fall apart and they want you to keep having babies. But yeah. It's an experience. So the first thing that no one really told me about childbirth that was actually a very important piece of information was that when your water breaks, it's not always like the movies, okay? It's not always like a giant gush of water that comes out. It's not like you're standing up or you're dancing and then all of a sudden there's a puddle of water at your feet. That does not always happen. Sometimes it does, but in my case, it didn't. In my case, I actually was leaking. I actually ended up going to the hospital to check to see if my water had broken because I called the doctor and was like, I'm kind of leaking. It's not like a gush of water, but I have fluid coming out of me and I'm not sure if my water had broken or not. So we went to the hospital and they, sure enough, they checked me and they're like, yeah, your water's been broken. And I probably had my water broken for like a couple of days. I remember I was like really trying to get Riley out of there because she was already late. She was way past her due date. She was like already like, I think I had her at like 40 weeks and 6 days. Like she was almost like a week past her due date. And I remember that whole like 40th week being like, okay, babe, like you gotta get out of there. And I remember sitting on a bouncy ball, like one of those giant like exercise balls, and I was like just trying to like jump up and down because that's something that they say you can do to expedite labor. And I remember standing up from that ball and my underwear was wet and I was like, oh well, I guess that's just something that happens. But no, that was my water being broken. So that's a piece of information I could have used because then later on when we got to the hospital and I delivered Riley, there's always like a chance of infection. You can get an infection if you go too long having your water broken. So just be mindful of that. If you're near your due date, you know, it's not always a gush of water. Another thing to know is that your doctor, like the doctor that you go see every month or every couple of months, like that might not be the doctor that delivers your baby. There's always a chance that that doctor is like on vacation or not on call. So you're definitely gonna wanna like make sure that you have that conversation with your doctor about like who's gonna deliver your baby if they're not able to. I know the practice that I went to see during my pregnancy, it was a group of 3 female doctors. They always told me up front, they're like, any of us, depending on who's on call, is the doctor that's gonna deliver the baby. And in the event, like there were a couple of weekends where like none of them were on call, so then it would have been like another practice. So I don't know, some people feel a lot more comfortable with like one specific doctor, but again, you don't want any surprises that day. You don't want to be like, whoa, 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 who are you? Like, why are you looking at my vagina? So definitely make sure that you have that conversation with your doctor first. That being said, get over the fact that people are gonna see your vagina because everyone is gonna see your vagina. Throughout labor, like I had Joe in the room, I had my mom in the room, but the entire time there were nurses and like people coming in and out and bringing stuff and bringing equipment and supplies, and I don't know, there were a lot of faces in that room and all of them saw my vagina. Even the nurses told us, they were like, this is nothing for us, like we see vaginas every single day. This is kind of like looking at our desk. Like other people go to work and they sit down at a desk and that's where they do our work. Your vagina is our desk. I'm not one to like walk around the streets showing my stuff to everybody. So I'm a little bit more modest, but I kind of had to get over that given the fact that I was having a child. And I even specifically remember, like I told my mom that she was gonna be in the room and I told Joe, yes, obviously you're gonna be in the room because that is your child. But I remember specifically telling them, you guys are gonna be behind me. Because I don't need you looking at anything up there. But yeah, they saw everything. Both of them saw everything. At one point, I remember even the doctor was like, look, her head is coming out. You can see her hair. And everyone was looking at Riley's head. coming out of my vagina. At that point, honestly, you're so exhausted that you don't care. You do not care who sees your vagina as long as the baby gets out of there. The other thing that people don't tell you about having a baby is the amount of rectal pressure that you can have during childbirth. Obviously, I'd heard about contractions. Obviously, I had heard that they hurt a lot, which they do, but no one prepared me for the rectal pressure that I had during childbirth. And then this is how it went. So I started feeling like there was a giant bowling ball coming out of my butt. It was legitimately like someone had put a bowling ball in my butt and it had to come out of there. Like, I don't know how to explain it any other way than that, but it was super painful. And so the anesthesiologist came in, because this was even after the epidural had been given to me. So I was like, why am I feeling this pain? Obviously you didn't do it right. So the anesthesiologist came in and he was like, and I told him, I was like, listen buddy, I'm having some pain down there in my butt, so you need to fix it. And then the doctor was like, no, like, I'm sorry, like, we can't do anything about that because the epidural is actually only just for contractions. We can't really do anything for rectal pressure. I was so confused because that was what was hurting me, and I thought that's what the epidural was for, so that I didn't have any pain. So after having some more conversations, he eventually hooked me up with some awesome cocktail. I don't know what the heck he did, but that guy should get a raise because he saved my life. And eventually he did something else, gave me some more medicine through the epidural, and then it stopped hurting. But that stuff, that's no joke. And then this I had heard about, but I don't know, maybe some people don't know about it, but you might poop on the table. Yeah, that's a real thing. A lot of people poop on the table. It's totally okay if you do, because imagine you're pushing. You are pushing a human out of your vagina. So naturally, when you push, your body is like, oh, I'm pooping, and you end up pooping on the table. I never asked if I did. I didn't even want to know. I didn't care. I was like, you know what? Some things I just don't need to know in my life. And so that was one of them. If I did, I did. And if I didn't, then that's great. Honestly, the nurses and stuff, like, they're so professional and they're so used to it that, like, even if you had pooped on the table, like, they wouldn't tell you and they would just clean it, and it's like it never happened. Another thing is, like, I don't know, I always thought of labor, like, I thought that I was gonna feel the most pain when I was actually pushing out the baby. Like, I pictured myself like curled up in a ball, like pushing so that the baby would come out, and like feeling like that was gonna be the most painful. But that's not the case. At least it wasn't the case with me. The contractions before I had the epidural, that was the worst pain. That was the worst of it all. Like, I remember going into the hospital, and at first when I was just having like teeny tiny contractions, like the nurse would be like, oh look, you're having contractions, because they can see it on the monitor and they can see like all the little waves jumping, and they're like, oh look, you're having a contraction. And I'm like, I can't feel it, so this is gonna be great. And I just remember thinking, like, this is gonna go awesome, because yeah, I don't feel any of the pain. Like, if that's what a contraction feels like, then I am in the clear. This is gonna be a no pain birth. But then they started hurting. And then they started hurting a little bit more. And then I was like, holy crap, I cannot move. It is so bad. At one point, I started to feel like I was like a wounded animal dying in the forest somewhere. Like, I was letting out howls. Like a wolf, like a howl. It was so bad. Yeah, contractions hurt. But then I got the epidural. The epidural, like, was the best thing ever. I didn't have any pain until I got that rectal pressure. Then I had no more pain after they fixed that. And then the actual pushing, the pushing didn't hurt. The pushing was just so tiring and so exhausting, because you're literally like, they're counting and they're like 1, 2, 3, push, and then you're pushing. And especially with an epidural, you can't really feel anything, so you don't even know if you're pushing. So the whole pushing doesn't hurt, it's just tiring if you have an epidural. If you don't have an epidural, I'm very sorry. So then there's this thing called an episiotomy. I got one. I don't know if I really needed one or if the doctor was just lazy, and I don't know. I didn't really have the best experience with my doctor. But the point of an episiotomy is basically when they cut like from your vagina towards your butt. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Look it up, Google it. It's not something you're really gonna wanna see, but if you want a better explanation than that, go look it up. So it's meant to help the baby come out, because like if your vagina is this little and your baby's head is this little, like, I don't know, it's just supposed to help the baby come out, from my understanding. Now, I didn't feel it because you're totally numb down there, so I didn't even know. Joe is the one who told me. Joe to this day is like scarred for life, because he remembers clearly hearing the doctor snip with scissors my vagina. So yeah, obviously they stitch it back up and then it's supposed to heal, but that is something that can happen. So just be prepared. Oh, and then after you actually deliver your baby, you also have to deliver the placenta. So I honestly didn't even like remember this happening because I was so focused on like, I delivered Riley, they put her on my chest, and then they took her quickly like to like do her footprints and like to cut her umbilical cord. That was kind of like in another little station. So while they were doing that, I was delivering the placenta. Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of other stuff that has to come out of you. Like, why? I don't understand. That doesn't hurt, at least again with an epidural, it doesn't hurt, but just understand that once you deliver your baby, there's still another delivery that has to happen. All right, another thing that no one really told me or that I didn't expect, which I've talked about before, is the fact that your baby can always end up in the NICU, right? It's not the ideal situation. It was the worst experience of my life, honestly. But I had always expected that only like teeny tiny preemie babies wind up in the NICU. I don't know if that was just like a super naive, uneducated thought, but I always associated the NICU with teeny tiny babies. So since Riley was like 40 plus weeks, I was like, there's no way she's gonna end up in the NICU. This baby's gonna be totally healthy and fine. She's been super healthy and fine the entire pregnancy. Every checkup was, she's doing great. There was a complication when I was delivering her, and she was having a hard time breathing on her own. And again, they were concerned because of the fact that my water had been broken, that maybe she had some kind of infection. So she did wind up in the NICU. She spent 3 days in the NICU. So just be prepared for the fact that things can happen. Okay, then there's like my favorite thing that I experienced after childbirth. And by favorite, I mean this was terrible. So the first poop that you take after you give birth, that's like an event. That is like, I don't know. It was very traumatizing. I kid you not, when I finally pooped after I gave birth, I was like more proud of the fact that I had pooped than of the fact that I had just had a baby. Like, I was like, I did it. Like, I was so scared to poop because imagine you have so much pain and swelling, and there's so much that has just happened down there, and you're scared that you're gonna tear something or that it's gonna be super painful. And this is such like a thing that happens. They even give you stool softeners at the hospital to help you go better so that it's not as painful. But yeah, that was not fun. I remember like I really needed to go like the first day after giving birth, and I was like no, I can't do this. I really cannot do this. And I was so scared, and I would sit on the toilet and I would try, and I would be like, nope, this is not gonna happen. Eventually, because that's how your body works, right? Eventually, everybody's gotta poop. And eventually I did, and like I said, I was so proud of myself. So as much as I wanna say, like, do not be so scared, like, you're still gonna be scared, but you'll get through it, I promise. Now I'm pooping just fine. Another thing you can expect is that you're gonna have a lot of bleeding for a very long time. I think I bled for like, I don't know, 4 or 6 weeks. Like it could be that long that you're bleeding. So I have a whole video where I talk about like postpartum essentials, and I go into a little bit more of like the details of what postpartum care looks like. So definitely check out that video if you're interested. But yeah, like there's gonna be a lot of pads and a lot of just bleeding. So that's a totally normal thing. It's just your body like cleansing itself of all the other stuff that was up in there. There's also a chance that you're gonna be super swollen after you give birth. So my whole pregnancy, I wasn't swollen. Like I had expected that, you know, a lot of people tell you like your ankles are gonna be swollen, your extremities are gonna be swollen. I never really swelled up. Like I looked pretty normal. But after I gave birth, I looked like an elephant. I looked like I was massive. It was really bad. Like I looked at my legs and they were like elephant trunks. Like everything was swollen, my feet were swollen, and that had to do with the fact that the entire like delivery process, like you're hooked up to an IV and they're pumping fluids into you. So I had a lot of fluids inside of me, and that just caused me to be swollen. So do not be afraid if you give birth and then you look like a hippopotamus. Like it can happen. Along those lines, you are still going to look pregnant. A baby came out of you, but you're still gonna look pregnant. I remember looking at myself in the mirror in the hospital after I gave birth, and I was like, I was so depressed because I was like, oh my God, I still look huge. Like I always knew that I was still gonna have some baby weight after giving birth, but I still looked very, very pregnant. And I've always been like very petite. I've always been on the smaller side. So the fact that I looked as big as I did, I was just very sad about it. So just be prepared. It's gonna take some time. I didn't really get back to like my good usual self until about 5 to 6 months postpartum. Now I feel awesome. Now I feel like I have shed all the baby weight that I wanted to lose. But even like 3 months postpartum, I still had a lot of weight that I wanted to lose. So do not be afraid, especially that first week after you deliver your baby. Like, you're still gonna have a stomach. You're still gonna look very pregnant. Another thing that they don't tell you is that it's gonna hurt down there for a very long time. Like, it's gonna hurt when you walk. Like, I remember coming home from the hospital and I couldn't walk around my house like I normally did. Like, I had to walk like on my tiptoes, like wobbling around like a crazy person because my vagina hurt a lot. And again, that's a normal thing. It's part of the healing process. I was alternating between Motrin and Tylenol all day long because if I didn't have my meds, I was in a lot of pain. So just expect that. Note to self, look, listen, I was in so much pain that my mom Googled like things to help with postpartum recovery, and she looked up this thing of like, you take a pad and you put, I don't know, she put like aloe vera and like essential oils, I don't know, she did this whole concoction on a pad, put it in the freezer, and then she was like, here you go, you can put this on your underwear and it's supposed to help you down there. Do not do that ever. I froze my vagina. Like, my vagina was frozen. I got like a brain freeze on my vagina. Do not do that. It hurts a lot. Instead, like I mentioned in my postpartum essentials video, there's this like Earth Mama bottom spray that I highly recommend. You can just spray that down there all day long and it helps a lot. So you also can't have sex for 6 weeks. That's a thing. They tell you, the doctor will tell you, you can't have sex for 6 weeks. You're also, I think, not supposed to like take a bath for 6 weeks if I'm not mistaken. So don't try that. Just don't. So give yourself that time to heal. I know, at least in my case, I wanted nothing to do with my husband in that way. After giving birth, there was just so much stuff going on down there that was like the last thing that I was thinking about. Plus, I wasn't sleeping. I was super cranky. So just give yourself 6 weeks. Also, it's totally normal if after the 6-week period, having sex still hurts. Like, that's still a thing. Like, I am 6 months postpartum, and I'm gonna tell you guys, it still hurts sometimes to have sex. I have had a baby now, so I'm pretty sure my mom knows that I'm having sex. So I'm able to say this. But yeah, sometimes it still hurts, and that's a normal thing. I looked it up. Especially for moms who breastfeed. I forgot if it's like your estrogen levels are going up or down, but there's something associated with breastfeeding that makes it hard for you to like naturally lubricate down there. So that's why like every time that you go to the doctor, especially like when you go for your 6-week appointment postpartum, the doctor will tell you use a lot of lube if you're gonna have sex, because if not, it's gonna be very painful. Eventually, it's supposed to get better, but again, everybody's body heals at a different pace. It's totally normal if you're like a year postpartum and it still hurts when you have sex. You're gonna wanna be careful. You're gonna wanna go slow. You're gonna wanna ease into it. Just listen to your body and just don't overdo it, I guess. So then the final thing that I'll say about this whole like giving birth, childbirth, postpartum thing is the fact that after you give birth, you might pee on yourself a couple times. I remember like a few weeks after I gave birth, I was in bed and I had one of those dreams where you're like going to sit on the toilet and peeing, and I actually peed the bed. I wet myself. It happened. And thank God that happened to me like in bed, in private, even though now I'm telling everybody. But it didn't happen like in a store or like while I was out running errands. But it happens to a lot of people because your bladder is a lot like looser, and just things have happened to your body. So just be patient with yourself. And like if that happens to you, if you're walking down the street and you pee on yourself a little bit, or you laugh and you pee, like, you're not alone. It's happened to a lot of people. Happened to me. Screw the guys, man. Like, none of this happens to the guys, to the men. Like, that's why like I love my husband, but like, I don't know, I just make him do things for me because I'm like, I had a baby. So that's it, guys. I hope that you guys liked this video. Again, super TMI. Now you know a lot of stuff about me. So now we can really be friends. So definitely, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss any of my videos. Give this video a big thumbs up if you found it helpful, if you learned anything that you didn't know before, if you liked hearing about the awkward stuff that happens when you give birth. And leave me a comment down below also in the comments. I would love to know like what the most surprising thing about childbirth was for you in your case if you've had a baby. I feel like that might be helpful if, you know, I missed a few things. And that's really it. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.